PGA Nation, we are back. And we are back with a special evening, Valentine's Day. And we are going to love our lineups and the golfers that we're going to pick for this weekend. The Genesis Invitational, some might call it the Tiger Woods special because the big cat is back. All the more reason for us to be in love. Great tournament this week. I mean, they started the year with a bunch of duds, a bunch of JV tournaments, and then back-to-back weeks we're getting what looks to be major like fields, as loaded as a field as you're going to see for any event this year. Super excited to dive in. And we were super excited to draft with a special guest tonight, but what happened?
So we got stood up on Valentine's Day, but it's not Stephie Smalls' fault. So some of you are in here, are in this chat, are watching us because you watch this show every week and we love you. Some of you are here because you wanted to see Stephie Smalls. So what happened with her was, well, her plane kind of got rerouted and she has just landed in Vegas and she's not going to make it to her room in time for the show. So our thought is, hey, listen, she might pop in the middle of this show if she actually, gets to her hotel in Vegas in time. The good news is she's going to be coming on the very next chance she can get, which is probably going to be next week. We just have to clear that with her schedule for next Tuesday night's PGA Draftcast. So, ladies and gentlemen who are watching, she might appear today, but she's definitely coming on to the show. She just had some travel issues. So hopefully we see her tonight, but if not, we'll probably see her next week. Those of you that are in the chat, we appreciate you being here. I see so many familiar names, so I know you're here for us for the most part. And if you are, please hit that like button. But yeah, that's it. We got to listen. These four guys got stood up on Valentine's Day. That's just the reality of the situation, and there's no sugarcoating it. Here we are.
It's a tough pill to swallow, but we're here, and it's okay because you know what? With that, we have a lot of money to be made, and I am excited to get to it and start breaking it down. Spence, how you doing tonight?
Well, I was doing better before Stephie couldn't make it tonight, but on a positive note, or at least it's a positive note for me, the three-peat finally happened. Wow. After all this time. And, Jason Day was meant to be on that team. He was very instrumental for everything getting done last week for me. So I don't know what that means for the future. I've started in about the most ridiculous fashion ever. I came in last place the first 3 weeks. I came in first place the next 3 weeks. I guess that's not a bad thing to be boom or bust with it, but for what it's worth, Joel, you are still winning the contest as of right now.
There we go. And it's all about, we thought about changing the name of the show to Game of Thrones. It's all about who holds the throne. And yes, I still own it. So it is my throne until further notice. And I have to win this week. But in order to do so, right, got to have the best draft. So before we dive into that, David, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Super sub in for Stephie. Definitely less attractive, definitely more hairy. And Valentine's Day, like, it's bad enough standing up one date, but standing up four in one go, what a heartbreaker. I mean, that's true heartbreak on Valentine's Day. So incredibly impressive, incredibly sad, but I'm looking forward to having Stephie on in the near future. But that's those digs, she's been swanning it up at the Phoenix Open and struggling to fly back into Vegas, which is having some pretty wild weather, which Spence can confirm. So we'll look forward to catching you next time and focus on drafting some good teams tonight.
Yeah, it was snowing here earlier. Weather was crazy.
Well, as we talk about crazy, and as we dive into the details, Spence, you have your work cut out for you this week on the course breakdown. This is a unique course breakdown for betting purposes, right? I think how you look at this course and how you handicap it from a golfer perspective, to me, it's one of the more unique courses on tour, just because it's not the typical like find the ball striker and that's your route to success, right? There's some real quirks to this course that I think are critical for us being able to pick some golfers. So, Spence, break it down for me. What are you looking for this week at Riviera?
Yeah, it's an event that yields an interesting total regarding the dispersion of scoring. It's kind of what you just talked about a second ago, Joel. There's a lot of ways that you can go about trying to find success here. We will get to some of the more vital corollary stats in a second, but the 3.2% decrease that we experience off the tee doesn't take into account the reward players have received over the years for distance. It's important to note that we saw accuracy tank to under 50% last year. That's nearly 17% off the expected baseline total of a generic track on tour. But I don't believe looking at the extremes of what this course has yielded is necessarily the best approach to find the median answer for what the test poses question-wise. I would instead highlight the 72.8% of approach shots that have come from 150 yards or over. That total is 12.1% above expectation. And the big difference in my model came when looking at strokes gained around the green. These surfaces are much larger than average, although we received nearly an 8% decrease in GIR percentage because of the greens' fast and firm texture. That can often be difficult to stop your ball when you're approaching out of the Kikuyu rough. For anybody out there that's not familiar with that rough type, we only see that twice a year here in Torrey Pines. You know, it's hard to stop it out of there. As I said, it's sticky, it's speedy greens. It's going to be awkward lies with these. It's a really big green complex, but it's also very quick with a lot of undulation to it. So I think when you add that mix of undulation, the deep bunkering around the greens, experience to know where you can lay up, and then just that overall around skill set when it comes to short game and all of that, I wanted players that were good drivers of the ball. We're obviously going to need quality proximity returns from over 150 yards, but it's kind of that complete array of short game stats that I found to be most important. And, you know, that's putting from 5 to 10 feet. That's 3-putt avoidance. I think because these greens are so large, you can putt from off the surface. So a lot of that comes in, like, if you're not in a bunker, that is obviously, but if you're somewhere that your ball finds one of the runoffs there, I do think you're able to putt. I in my opinion, that's why we've seen a guy like Hovland maybe find a little bit of success here, just because it's not so much of an around the green problem as it's like you can use the flat stick in different ways to maneuver through the course. So, you know, there's a lot of short game metrics in my model. That's kind of the big takeaway from it. And obviously that 150 plus proximity distance is just going to be massive this week.
Yeah, I'll reiterate. I found my creation of what you would call a model to be the most unique setup this week than I've seen in a while in terms of what I'm weighting and how we're looking at it. So it makes things tricky, right? I think the biggest one that jumped off for me was Hovland, right? A guy who at first glance you would think wouldn't be a course fit, but he has a great history here. So, you know, catch 22, and we'll kind of find out who we're looking for this week. I think, like we said, a super deep field, super competitive pricing. So it should be able to create some unique looking lineups. And without further ado, I'm going to pull the draft board up and we'll get into it. For those of you who are new or maybe haven't seen a draft before, quick reminder, this works like a snake draft, like a typical fantasy football draft. We go 1 through 4. The fourth pick goes twice, and then we go back. The audience, you are drafting your team with Sia as normal. So when you're up, you make your nominations, and then Sia will pick the player based on the guys nominated. You do have to stay within a DraftKings salary, so you can't just take all the best players. Draft your team strategically, knowing you have to make sure you get all your guys within salary. Without further ado, Spence, you're on the clock.
So as you guys know, when I build a model, even if I go very mad scientist with it, and I do add a lot of things together that are unique and outside the box, I get relatively, or I should say, very straightforward returns. Like, it's hard for Rahm, Scheffler, Rory. If those guys are in the field, they're usually number one overall for me. It's very rare for that not to be the case. We sometimes get some situations when Justin Thomas won at the Players Championship a couple years ago. He made it to number one in my model. There's been some weird occurrences where Patrick Cantlay's gotten to number one. Fortunately, that doesn't have as great of a success story with that. There's been a lot of miscuts with him. But there is a player this week that bucked the trend of those three big golfers, and that would be Xander Schauffele at 9,900. I love everything about him this week. Like, this might be one of those situations to where if I'm building out 150 lineups, this might be as close as I get to 100% on a player that I play the entire year. You could say the weighted proximity might not be exactly what you want. You could say the par 5 scoring is a little bit lower than you would hope to see, but I ran 7 categories this week. He was inside the top 10 of 6 of them. He's number one for weighted short game, and he's one of only 2 golfers that when I combined my weighted tee to green and the weighted short game, that graded inside the top 20 for both of them. So, you know, that's a lot of putting that's added to the mix on that back end of it there. So if you're telling me He's one of the pristine ball strikers in this tournament, and then also has the short game to take advantage of it. That sounds like a recipe of how you can win this golf tournament. So I know he's going to be popular. Going to kind of ignore that number, and I'm going to take Xander first overall.
Yeah, and David, I don't mind, as we wait for Joel's pick, I don't mind starting my lineup in the Xander, in that 9K price range with Xander Schauffele. What say you on that? I mean, can you imagine yourself forming a lineup starting at Xander and avoiding the big three plus Justin Thomas?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's obviously the two kind of traditional routes to building your lineup, right? The stars and scrubs all taking a more balanced approach. And if you're going that balanced approach, then starting in the 9K, maybe getting one to two 9K guys, and then looking to avoid the sixes and low sevens completely is not a bad strategy at all. We're obviously, Xander was within my selections last week, and he was right there in contention until probably about 22 holes in. So towards the end, around 3, bogeyed the par 5, which is kind of like losing 1.5 strokes at field. He never really recovered it from there. But diving into those numbers a little bit more, which, I always like to do some post-analysis, he missed just on that back 9 on his final round, missed 6 of his 9 putts by 25 inches or less. So, I mean, when you're hitting the ball on the green, you're giving yourself those putts for birdie. There are going to be those days where they just don't drop, and that is going to happen. You can't really predict that. But the approach play looked really solid, and there was a massive spike in his driving accuracy as well.
All right. Yeah. I mean, I like Xander this week as well. And I like a lot of guys in the 9K range, just like everybody else does. Joel, it's on you with your first pick. We got Xander, and then who?
All right. So I'm pretty locked in on my strategy for this week. And, common for me in fields like this, I like to go balanced. I think I can get 6 guys with high floors and, basically take one of those studs not to win. It puts me in a great position. So one of my favorite values on the board this week is Tyrrell Hatton. He's coming off, his ball striking has been elite. He's just in really good form. He's gaining a lot of strokes off the tee, even on his approach. And he's had a really good run on the DP tour. So a lot of those stats you might not see in some of the things we're looking at on DraftKings and things like that. So I think he might get a little bit even overlooked by how good he's playing. And 8,100 allows me a lot of flexibility moving forward.
David, I want to go right back to you on Tyrrell Hatton and get your opinion, because I think everybody who watches this show knows that you pay a lot of attention to the World Tour. I mean, we're going to be doing shows on the World Tour, your articles in WinDaily Sports, which you post in the Discord, in our Discord. You have World Tour picks and articles, and of course, PGA Tour picks and articles. So that's a really great reason to sign up for WinDaily Sports. But with all that said, I got to think you love this pick. Yes or no?
I do, and I suspect that the fact I've dropped a few of my plays in the Discord about 15, 20 minutes ago may have influenced Joel's pick, because Hatton was within those names. So great selection from Joel, and sneaky suspicion he may have had some early tip-off in the WinDaily Discord.
Interesting. Joel, can you confirm or deny that?
All I have to say is that smile looks like somebody that just got away with murder over.
No, I don't know. I'm in fairness, David, I love you. I was laughing at you. That I did not steal your pick. That was just who I wanted to take, and I was not thinking about taking any of your picks. But I'm happy that you like him too. I think it just makes me like him even more than I already did.
Yeah, look, I mean, the stats are kind of off the charts for Tyrrell. He's in great form, and his short game is excellent. And I think, as Ben mentioned at the beginning of the show in his course breakdown, that's going to be a real key to success here. 6 last week in the Phoenix Open as well, so arriving in great form and great history on related courses too.
Yeah, that's a good pick. That's certainly somebody I have my eye on as well. David Smalls, it's your pick. And for those of you that are late joining us, 2 things. 1, hit the like button, and 2, and go sign up for WinDailySports.com. It's incredibly inexpensive. So inexpensive, I think I'm going to need to have a talking to Jason Mizrahi. But if you're wondering, where's Stephie Smalls, who was supposed to appear on this show? She had plane problems going from Phoenix to Las Vegas. Nice life there, by the way. It goes from the WM Phoenix Open and the Super Bowl to Vegas, but there's all kinds of storms and wind and snow in Vegas. So she got rerouted. She's probably not going to pop in tonight, although she might if the timing is right. But more importantly, she'll probably be on next week with us or whenever her schedule's free, most likely in the next 2 weeks. So stay tuned for that. But that's why you see David's beautiful face instead of Stephie. So, David, with all that said, you got Terrell Hatton stolen from you. Who are you taking now?
I do. I think I probably would have gotten this pick regardless of whether Hatton was on the board or not. I would have liked to have taken Hatton maybe on the way back. But I would love to take Justin Thomas with my first pick, who is finally beginning to show a bit of life with his irons, which is always the key indicator for JT. His record here is excellent. The short game is on point. And across the 4 rounds, when you dive into the data, the approach play just increased. We saw him grinding on the range out there in Phoenix as well, trying to find something, and I think he potentially has. It marks 2 weeks in a row, 2 tournaments in a row where he's gained 5+ strokes on approach, which is a great indicator of his chances.
Yeah, it's funny because there's a lot of really smart people so far this week, and of course that now includes you, David, that have really been on Justin Thomas this week. And I got to say, I think he's going to break everybody's heart. I really do. It's just a gut feeling I have. There's no data behind my gut feeling. The data is behind what David is saying. And if you look at the history here and you look at the recent form, it does look like JT is about to become JT again and really kind of put himself in that top 5 conversation. For me, I think I'm going to end up avoiding him. But listen, that's more of a gut play than it is a play with the metrics in mind. With that said, the audience has at least one person has been officially nominated, and it's Viktor Hovland. Viktor Hovland by William Neal and Edward Gale. You have nominated Viktor Hovland. Now we're waiting on a second. Steven says Max Homa. I think I'm just going to go. Oh, did Rory get nominated? Oh, Rory got. Okay, so we're going to be out of money here. No, we're okay. Okay, Viktor Hovland, Rory McIlroy. Okay, I'm okay with that. Brian England confirming that. I was going to be on the Max Homa train. I like Max Homa. He'll probably get drafted by somebody else. No problem. Listen, this should be a better course fit. Spencer, for Rory this week rather than last week. Viktor Hovland's an interesting case because we're so focused on around the green game. But just like Joel said earlier, or somebody who said it earlier, I think it was Joel, this is a guy who's, I think he's at a 4th and a 5th here the last 2 years. So clearly, he's been able to navigate this course close to the greens better than most. With that said, I like both of these picks. I love the upside here. I love the price of Viktor Hovland. Do you like both of these guys, or is there one you're staying away from, Spencer?
I like both of them. I guess the one problem that I would say with Viktor Hovland is just the ownership. I always worry a little bit when Hovland or players of that sort of mold with it start pushing 20%.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a couple other guys maybe that are directly around them in different areas there that I might rather play than Hovland, but he's 10th overall in my model. So it's hard to find a reason to say that I massively, dislike him on that. But I guess it would be an ownership concern above anything else. Like if I was playing in MME tournaments, there might be other routes to go with it. And then Rory, Rory's Rory at this point. I think there's players in the $10,000 range that I'd rather play than Rory. I guess I'll keep some of that to myself right now. I think Thomas is an intriguing one, but I don't know. I have not made a decision. Like obviously it's 2 top 10 players for me. I don't know if either one is going to be a mainstay of my lineups this week though.
Yeah, I'll tell you, even though this is partly my team here, I think I'm going to be off Hovland this week, but it's mostly with ownership in mind.
100%.
I'm not so sure I'm buying. Like it sounds ridiculous to say, but I'm not so sure I'm buying into the course history here with Viktor Hovland. I'm not saying he got lucky and that it's not real, but I don't know. This is another one of those where the course fit still doesn't seem perfect, but I love the price, and that's part of the reason he's super popular. Joel, real quick before we get to David's pick. Just a simple yes or no on Viktor Hovland.
I'm going to say no for the reasons you said. I think I don't think the leverage is there with the ownership.
Fair enough. All right, David, you've got Justin Thomas, who you love and a lot of smart people love. Who's next?
Yeah, kind of. It does. It feels like Will Zalatoris, the BMW Championship again of the whole industry's on JT this week. So I'm going to go grab a bit of value with mine. And get Wyndham Clark with my next pick. Driving distance, approach, around the green game. Predicted sort of towards the end of last season that either Wyndham Clark or Aaron Wise was going to have a really, really big year. And Wyndham Clark started to show shades of that last week, and the approach play has really been improving, which is a promising sign.
Welcome to the Wyndham Clark Show, because if you've been watching this show, you know we mention Wyndham Clark in a very positive light every single show, at least since the calendar year started, which I understand is not that long ago. But I think even in swing season, we were talking about, Joel, I feel like you were the first person to be on that Wyndham Clark train, and the rest of us have not been far behind. So, the one thing with Wyndham Clark is I just wonder if this is sustainable. I mean, it looks like it might be. The approach play has just been so good with him. And I just wonder if that part's sustainable. I think, we know we can get hot with the putter. The driving is going to be great here. I think he's a really good play at a really good price. I'm looking at the ownership now, and it's pretty low, actually, surprisingly, right now. At least that's what I see. Spencer, are you seeing relatively low ownership on Wyndham Clark as well?
I see 11.66%.
Oh, mine's different. Okay, fair enough. So we'll have to wait for Steven's article again. Stephen Pilardi's article, he's in the chat, I believe. He helped nominate, I believe, Rory McIlroy. Oh no, he was trying to nominate Max Homa. But the point is, he does our ownership article. That article also has picks in it. And in my estimation, listen, no disrespect to anybody, but that article is, like, in my opinion, fundamental to you making your lineups. Like, I'd almost wait for that article before you really lock in your lineups. And also, he's got some tips in there. He's got some low rent plays that seem to come in every single week. It's kind of uncanny. It's kind of what I was doing with the secret weapon a couple of years back. Well, Steven has taken that over, and he has carried that torch way higher than myself. All right, speaking of carrying torches, you got Tyrrell Hatton. Joel, who is your second pick?
I'm excited how this is going to work, how this has worked out for me. There was a guy I was contemplating with my first pick between Hatton, and he's still here, so I'm going to go ahead and take Hideki Matsuyama. And it's a lot of the same reasons why I like Hatton, right? I think he's right in that same price range as Hatton, a similar ownership, again, in good form, but more also for the reasons that we were talking about before, what might make a good course fit here. Matsuyama is going to check a lot of those boxes. I think one of the things we might not have mentioned yet on this show is how difficult and how important sand saves are going to be this week. Yeah. And Hideki's one of the strongest in the field in getting out of those bunkers, and he's got a pretty good history playing here. And it again goes back to, now I have two guys who I feel like can both give me top 10s and really compete this week under 8,500, so I can really balance out the rest of my lineup.
I highly recommend some of you listening starting your lineup the way Joel has. I love Decky this week, and you guys know I'm not really a Decky guy. It's very rare that I actually select Decky. I love this price. Ownership doesn't seem to be super high. I mean, if you look at the stats last week, there's a lot of stuff that you'd look at and be like, ooh, geez, I'm not so sure about that. Like the approach play, he almost lost literally 5 strokes on approach, which is staggering, but I'm really not worried about that. I mean, yeah, of course, anything like that can happen again, but he's a monster with the short game. His approach game is usually, granted, it's been a tough run for him over the last 6-7 months, but just before that, losing 5 strokes, I mean, he's been okay with the ball striking. So I think he can get hot here. I think he can find some of the old Hideki stuff, and we know the short game and the putting can get red hot. So I think at 8,200 at relatively low ownership, I just really, really like this pick. He's a guy that I think you can bet in the outright market, and I'll put my outrights just with everybody else in WinDaily Discord. We do our first round leaders at the end of this show, but we put our outrights in the WinDaily Discord, and I'll tell you, if memory serves, I was on a show earlier, I'm pretty sure Decky is 50-1 to win this thing. So I know it sounds irresponsible, but that's something I'm going to take every time. I see Decky, I see 50-1. I'll take it every time. All right, Spencer.
And wait, but irresponsible, you mean irresponsible not to take it?
That's what I meant, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, irresponsible not to take it. Yeah, no, thanks, because some people might not have gotten the gist of that. Okay, Spencer, you've got Xander, clearly your favorite guy of this tournament, or at least that's what you made it sound like, and that makes a lot of sense to me. Now you got back-to-back picks. For one, Spencer, I'm a little curious. Have any of your guys been stolen? Because you don't seem really upset. You're not squirming too much. Are you? Is it you got free reign here of the guys that were in your player pool in the first place?
I mean, I would have considered Justin Thomas. I think that's probably the biggest one. And I like the Hideki pick from Joel. Like, the one thing I'll say about it is a lot of markets do not like it. And that's at least something to point out. I'm willing to be under the mindset that Hideki has top 10 equity at a price tag that is really good, at an ownership percentage that's very nice right now. I'm willing to go the other direction with it and play Hideki. So now that Hideki is off the board, and I'm not going to try to build this, I guess, in that route, God, I did not plan on doing this, and this is about as chalky as you can get to start a build, but I think I'm going to take Tony Finau and Patrick Cantlay. And I'm going to figure out the lineup from there. And I really like Finau a lot this week. It's kind of like when we look at the weighted proximity from 150 plus yards, he's inside the top 10. He's number one in my model for weighted scoring. I like him at these tests where he can use his short game to an advantage. I think Cantlay, the frustrating thing about him, and I had this conversation with Nick on Better Golf, he was like 10% projected to be owned up until this afternoon. And for whatever reason, the Cantlay number has now caught steam, and I'm seeing like 18%. That worries me because I do believe that Cantlay has some miscut potential this week. But look, it's Valentine's Day. Who's closer on tour than Xander and Patrick Cantlay? I feel like it's good vibes to throw them into a lineup together. And then Tony Finau is a friend to everybody. So this feels like a very unison sort of team. Like we're connected. We're ready to try to go for a four-peat here. I don't know exactly how we're going to build this out at the bottom. Like we might be plucking people off the street to try to figure out this lineup to round it out. But I was not planning to do this. And I even made the comment with Nick. I think one of the dangerous things to do is to go some combination, and we can throw Homa into that mix too, but 3 of those 4 to start your build, because I could see a lot of people trying to go that route, and that's exactly what I've done this week, but I kind of like all 3 of them a lot, so it'll be a unique build to see how I can figure it out.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I like Finau quite a bit, and I liked Cantlay at the beginning of the week, but to your point, with this ownership creeping up, I don't know that I'm willing to take him much anymore because he's risky. I mean, I put him in the same sort of conversation as Hideki in terms of there's a lot of risk reward there. Certainly more risk with Hideki, don't get me wrong, but Cantlay at close to 20% ownership, that's a tough pill to swallow because I thought he'd at least be a little less owned, but at that price, it's hard to resist. Joel, let me ask you before we get to your pick. Either like Tony Finau makes a lot of sense. He is going to be high. Honestly, if I were drafting the team audience, the first 2 picks probably would have been Finau and Hideki. That's just my guess at how I would have done that. Not that I don't like our picks, but that's probably the direction I was going to go. Is Finau firmly in your player pool, or is it maybe an ownership play? You leave him out.
No, Finau's in. I think I'm more in on Finau now that the price adjusted back to like what I feel like should be Tony Finau's price under the 10K range in that second tier. He does have that winning upside. Now, if the ownership gets too high, like I'll come off them because there's just so many guys up there that can go. But if the ownership stays reasonable, I'll definitely be playing Tony.
All right, fair enough. And David, real quick before we get to Joel's pick, Cantlay, is it a yes or no?
I'm completely out on Cantlay at the moment.
All right. I think I
agree with the ownership problem. Like that's a real problem at 20% now. And it's a weird pick to make when I'm not even 100% convinced that he's going to make my player pool, but I love the upside. I think he can go win this tournament. And that's unfortunately more of a betting answer than a DFS answer, but I kind of wanted to see how this lineup would get built out if you went this route with it.
Well, yeah, and Joel, it's your pick, but that's the frustrating thing about Cantlay. You don't usually see it with Cantlay in terms of see it coming. Last year was the same thing. Do you remember how frustrated people were, including myself, with Patrick Cantlay? It was like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And then boom, he'd show up. So, I mean, I think it's one of those things where with Cantlay, you don't necessarily see the signs approaching. It just happens with Patrick Cantlay. So I like the pick. I think it's an interesting DFS pick. Again, though, the ownership, it's like, man, you were hoping you were getting an ownership discount on that. I'll probably end up being out on Cantlay, even though I liked him earlier in the week. All right, Joel, you got Hatton, you got Hideki. A very good start to your lineup. You got a lot of money to spare, in my opinion. Who's next?
So I owe everyone one. I haven't had a withdrawal in a while. It's time. I'm due. I need to give it a withdrawal. So I'm going to, to spare everyone the decky back problem concerns. I'm going to go ahead and take Matthew Fitzpatrick. I know the risk. I know it. He's hurt. He said he's hurt. But listen, he's been playing. He actually ended up getting a top 30 last week. It was a pretty decent finish. Back to my major point, this balanced approach, he's 8,300. And we know this. If he hits the ball well, the upside's there. Matthew Fitzpatrick, healthy, can win this tournament. So from what I think is a good course fit, which is something I can't have a lot of confidence on, he checks all those boxes. He's a guy that's going to be strong out of the bunkers. He's a guy that should be good with his short game. He's going to make putts. if he can find a little bit of ball striking and not have any of those neck issues, I think he's gonna have a really good week.
I curiously like this pick. David, before your pick, I kind of want to go to you on this one because I'm not a Matt Fitzpatrick guy, but at 8,300 with a very good course history here, it just seems like, I mean, he's getting some ownership from what I'm seeing, but it's nothing like out of control crazy. I like the value here. He's another guy I kind of put in the Patrick Cantlay sort of conversation where he hasn't really done much super recently, but could absolutely pop and finish 5th in this thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was just having a wee chuckle because, Joel's obviously got a great history of WDs on the Draftcast, and so the Matsuyama Fitzpatrick back-to-back is like, I don't know, maybe the anti-karma of like picking all the guys who are most risky to WD, and then nobody's going to WD. I don't know. It might be a good working theory. I do like Fitzpatrick. I mean, we saw last year what happened, right? Got in there with his speed coach, fixed the main flaw in his game, which was driving distance. And I do think that given the missed fairway percentage here is so high, I mean, it's in the lowest 5 courses on tour for fairways found, that having that extra driving distance is an asset, because if you're going to be missing the fairway anyway, may as well be further and closer to the green. And I like some of his iron proximities. I mean, and it's one of those things, right? Same probably with Zalatoris this week, of like some injury concerns can really put people off ownership for the exact reason they don't want a WD, which Joel seems to have no fear for.
He certainly doesn't. All right. Speaking of no fear, is it going to be a risky play here? You got Justin Thomas, you got Wyndham Clark. What you got next?
And I think this is probably going to be a high ownership play, but I just can't ignore the value of Alex Noren at 7,300. That's just way too cheap for somebody who's in great form. Look, he missed the cut last week when he was within selections, but I do have a history of being 1 to 2 weeks too early on guys, and I'd rather go back to him here than take that risk of leaving him out. What did improve a lot was in his second round was his approach play. He was in the top 8, I believe, during the second round for his strokes gained approach, and ended up coming back after a pretty indifferent first round. So I can put that down to diving into his numbers a little bit. When he's had these 3-week kind of breaks off tournaments, he has tended to play pretty poorly in the first tournament back, and then find something. And it looks like in that second round that the numbers were pretty good, both with the irons, and we know he can chip and putt. So for 7,300, I think he's got top 20 upside.
All right. I like Noren. I'm definitely playing him this week. I think he's a really good course fit, good history here. Not really worried, to your point, David, not really worried about the miscut last week. I mean, he was okay. You know, if you look at the metrics overall, he was okay. He just missed the cut. That happens. We have our 2 picks here. So it looks like, and the audience can confirm, oh, Zach Jeffers, thank you. See, the chat is so sophisticated now, because they don't really wait for me to be like, all right, I think it's these 2 guys. They're like, these are the 2 guys. So props to Zach and Jesse. And Jesse, good to see you back. Chargy65 is in here. We got Steven, of course. Courtney, I'm missing some names because there's so many people in this chat. Evan, hey, what's up? But yeah, we got it. Keegan Bradley and Taylor Montgomery. So interesting here. Again, this is not a criticism. I don't think I'm going to be a Keegan guy this week. What's interesting about Taylor Montgomery is, if you all recall, it might not have been on this show, but I've bet against Taylor Montgomery the last 2 tournaments. I haven't liked Taylor Montgomery the last 2 tournaments, whether it's in play or as a full 72-hole matchup. But this is a different situation, I think, where I think his putter can really come into play. So I'm not saying I'm out or I'm in on Taylor Montgomery. I haven't made that decision. But I do think some of his ball striking concerns aren't really going to be as big of an issue here. So Spencer, I want to go to you, and then David, real quick. Oh, excuse me, Joel, real quick on you before we get back to David's pick. Is it in or out on Taylor Montgomery, Spencer?
I kind of lean towards being out. And the reason why I give that answer is just the proximity numbers are so bad.
Yeah.
Until that can improve, and I don't exactly know what he is as a putter on Fast POA. So he's number 1 in my model when I look at all strokes gained putting. He drops to 19th on Fast POA. If you're telling me that there's a reduction of what we're expecting from him, I worry a little bit. Now, in the same breath of that doesn't mean that he can't gain 7 strokes putting in top 10 this tournament. It's kind of the recipe of what he puts together, and the short game is magnificent, and maybe that putter can lead him here. But I don't know. I mean, there's probably other spots that I would rather go. I don't necessarily dislike him to the point of like as much as I'm making it, but I don't necessarily want him to be the first guy that goes into my lineup either.
So I'm taking heat because, and by the way, Spencer, I kind of agree with you here. Joel, do you agree with that, or are you kind of on the other side? You like Taylor this week?
I like Taylor. I'm not going to
Okay.
go as far as say I love him. I'm going to jam him in, but I think he's someone that will find a small percentage of my lives.
Fair enough. And so, I'm not trying to be mean to the audience. These aren't necessarily my guys. And now I'm all cocky, right? Because I had a really good week last week in DFS. So like now I think I'm amazing. Like talk to me the 3 or 4 or 5 weeks before that. And it was like, it wasn't great. So I don't know. Maybe I'm building some momentum, but this isn't a bad tournament lineup in my opinion. Although it's got a little chalk to it, but we'll see. We've got 7 and change left for our last 2 picks. So let's be creative here. David, it's on you. You got Alex Thorne. Who's next?
Yeah, so I'm going to go back to a familiar play of late, which is Johnny Vegas, who just continues to get disrespected. And I'm not sure what it's going to take other than like a win to get his price to change, because 6,900's an absolute bargain.
Yeah, this WinDaily team was on Vegas last week. I hope some of the people that were in our Discord were on him as well. I hadn't really looked at him, David, for this particular tournament. Is there anything? Obviously, we know what his strengths are, and we know since the shoulder surgery, he's been pretty good. Is there anything in particular that jumped out to you, other than just the sheer value of him being in the 6K range and the ball striking's been good? Like, what else is jumping out to you with Vegas?
I mean, he's got plenty of driving distance off the tee. The approach stats, the around the green game's in really good space as well. I mean, he's coming off a 25th at Torrey Pines and a 23rd in elevated event at Phoenix last week, arriving in a spot where, he's had some history. He's got a 15th year before and a 12th, I believe, as well. So he's got decent history here before the planned surgery, and I think it's just a case of people aren't really paying attention to him because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. But he's quietly having a pretty good return from his planned surgery towards the end of last year.
So back 9 bets, otherwise known as Model Maniac, otherwise known as Byron. How many names do you need, by the way? He says Joel's hay fever is 10 out of 10 with all those flowers. That's a reference to me throwing flowers to Joel because I love his team so much. Watch out for that balanced build this week, everybody. I'm just telling you. So Joel, you got the balanced build. Are you staying balanced, or are you veering in one direction or the other with your 4th pick?
Well, clearly Sia is good at what he does in analyzing golf tournaments because he knows a good team when he sees one. With that being said, I'm going to pick a strategic pick here. There's a guy I really want that I'm going to wait because I don't think Spencer can afford him. And if he takes him somehow and goes bare minimum with the last 2 picks, then I'm just going to be really upset. But I don't think he could afford him, so I'm going to wait on him. And I'm going to start with Siwoo Kim. Siwoo Kim's been playing great. Just great form. You're getting him under 8K. A lot to like. And like I said, it keeps on my balance theme. I think I can get 6 guys that I don't have to deep down and kind of roll the dice on. I am going to need, by taking this approach, I'm going to need one of these guys to come up and have a showing and win the tournament. But if I can do that, I think this balanced approach can make my floor so high, can make this team very dangerous.
All right, Spencer, I know you got back-to-back picks, but we haven't heard from you in a couple picks. I'm curious what you think about Siwoo Kim, because this is another guy that I'm really on the fence on this week.
Like I think the thing is with Siwoo Kim, and this is one of the things I've said throughout the week, if somebody's going to win this tournament, it has to, and I'm talking about a player that's not near the top of the board. Like let's remove anybody who's 40-1 or better. It has to be somebody with pedigree. It has to be somebody like a Shane Lowry, a Tommy Fleetwood, a Siwoo Kim. Siwoo Kim won the Players' Championship. Lowry won the Open Championship. Fleetwood has won over in Europe. You can make the same argument about Keegan Bradley winning a major. There's only so many golfers once we drop down into the $7,000 range that I actually think would possess actual win equity. I guess the other name that I'll throw out there would be like a Sahith Theegala, just because we don't know what he is at this point, and the upside seems to be very high for him. But look, I don't have a problem with the Siwoo Kim pick, and to be honest, I don't have a problem with any pick that Joel's made so far. I think it's a unique build that he has going. All these guys are kind of underappreciated for what they provide. like the Fitzpatrick Hideki thing is too fitting for what Joel would put into a lineup, but I also love it. I don't think there's a lot of people that are going to do it. And like, that feels like a GPP winning lineup to me with those two together.
Yeah. And I'll say that what I'm seeing in that upper 7K range is that there's low ownership kind of across the board. The low 8K range, you see some ownership, which makes sense. But that high 7K range, other than Taylor Montgomery at 7,600, who I'm just realizing has got some ownership from what I'm seeing. Good job, audience. But no, I'm kidding, of course. But yeah, no, I guess I agree on Siwoo Kim. Again, on the fence there, I don't think he's going to make it into my lineup. Spencer, you've got 3 heavy hitters with your first 3 picks. You got 2 picks to make. Who's it going to be?
I wanted to take the Gala really badly, and I don't know how to afford him and figure out a lineup the way that I want it to be. I don't know if I can afford anybody that's much more expensive than that. I'm going to try to play a little safety right now with 2 guys that I am hoping can get me a made cut. I'm hoping they can get me top 30 or 40 finishes. There's a lot of things in my model that likes the trajectory that they're showing. The first one is a golfer that I was on last week that burned me. That would be JT Poston. I'm willing to go back to him this week. And I don't know if I've ever done this in 5 years of being in the space of taking this golfer. I am going to close my eyes and I'm going to take Bo Hostler. And I am going to hope that some of what we have seen from him recently of the back-to-back top 15 finishes, plus the 2 straight top 50 results at this tournament, can translate. We know he's a great putter. He's never going to look great from a modeling perspective, but he's also cracking the top 50 for me, which I can't tell you the last time that's happened when I've run the model the way that I do. So I'm hoping I can get 2 made cuts out of them and then kind of just have the other 3 guys lead me.
One thing I noticed when I was looking at matchups, Bo Hostler really jumped out at me, Spencer. And I know you just recorded the Better Golf podcast with Nick Bretwish, which everybody should already be subscribed to. I imagine everybody is because it's an amazing show. But I saw him as a favorite in a couple matchups where I was like a pretty heavy favorite, where I was like, all right, that's interesting. I would not have, if I had to guess the number with that particular matchup, I would have thought he was like plus 100. Instead, he was like minus 130. Is that what you're seeing across markets on Bo Hostler?
That's exactly what I'm seeing. And that's one of the things that pushed me in this direction. And truth be known, I would have liked Alex Noren. Like, that would have been a much more preferred route for how I would have built this team. When David took that, it kind of put me in a position here where I have to figure it out with somebody else that I thought had some safety to them. But yeah, I mean, I see him minus 140 against Woodland. I see him minus 135 against Kitayama. That means something to me when my model kind of likes him more than it usually does also.
And Jesse O'Shea, who again, I don't remember seeing Jesse in a while. So thank you so much for coming back to the show. He says Bo Hostler, California kid. So that's certainly likely going to help as well. David, real quick, before we get to Joel's 5th pick, JT Poston, in or out?
I think that JT Poston possibly needs a shorter track than what we're going to find here. I think he prefers those shorter courses and maybe something a bit more lower scoring as well. Like, I think we're going to look at like a winning total around the 14 under mark. So the Bo Hostler one's really interesting for me because he's the perfect example of, as I said earlier in the show, of me being a week or two too early on a guy. So he was in my selections at the American Express and the Farmers Insurance Open, where he finished 50th, missed the cut, and then his next 2 starts, he's gone 11th and 14th. So it's a classic example of me being 2 to 3 tournaments too early on someone, because that does tend to happen a little bit. I see the metrics improving, and I know that these are going on an upward trajectory, and Hostler's kind of the epitome of that.
Yeah, and there's a larger point there, right? So there's a lot of times, listen, I know every course is different and therefore every course fit is different, but if you like the trajectory of somebody, and please hear this, I feel like this is kind of in one ear out the other for a lot of people. If you like the trajectory of somebody and they burn you one tournament, you kind of have to play him again, because your research, granted, it can be course specific at times, but your research led you somewhere, and you can't let 2 rounds, because that's usually what it is. You can't let 2 rounds tell you that your research is completely wrong. You got to give it at maybe 2 tournaments, maybe 3 tournaments. In David's case, he would have needed to go to him for 3 tournaments before that payoff came there, but it would have come, and it would have come for a 4th tournament as well. So don't believe in your research. And the sample size of 1 tournament, or in some cases just 2 rounds, is a garbage sample size. So you have to believe in your research and allow that sample size to grow and grow and grow over 2 or 3 tournaments at the very least. Joel, You got 4 picks, very balanced lineup. I'm very curious to see how you finish this one. Who's your 5th pick?
I'm glad he lasted to me. Another California guy, Max Homa. Max Homa's playing great. He won this tournament 2 years ago. The way he's playing now, I see no reason why he can't go back and win it again. And I still get him under 10K, where allows this lineup to remain pretty balanced. I don't have to dip into the 6K range even with my last pick.
Yeah, I love Max Homa. Spencer, I'm going to go to you on this one. I'm definitely going to have Max Homa in a lot of my lineups for a lot of the reasons Joel stated. Love the history here. Love that it's in California. How you feeling about Max Homa this week?
So if my player pool ended up being Xander, Finau, Cantlay, I don't think it would be able to have Max Homa also included in that mix. And I'm talking about if I'm building out a bunch of lineups. I think there's just too much ownership. I'd probably have to make a decision between that. And I think that's where Cantlay and Homa are going to be interchangeable for anybody. And it might even be interchangeable. I could reach this point tomorrow where I wish I would have taken Homa instead of Cantlay. I think that's a very possible scenario. And when I alluded to Xander being one of 2 players that ranked in the top 20 when it came to tee to green plus the weighted short game, Max Homa was the 2nd player there. And my model absolutely loves him this week. He is a top 3 player for me with the way that I ran it. And that's the highest I've probably ever seen Homa before. So like, once again, there's really nothing wrong with how Joel has built this so far. He has a very popular guy in Homa, and then he has found a way to put an under the radar Fitzpatrick, an under the radar Matsuyama. Hatton is not going to carry ownership. Siwoo Kim is kind of in the middle. It's like the perfect build of really to try to get the most out of it.
With the exception of the 2 pending withdrawals, Hideki Matsuyama and Matt Fitzpatrick. And Joel, you did that to them. They didn't do it. So let's be clear.
I apologize in advance.
Let's be clear. I'll tell you right now, before we get to David's pick, I'm going to be starting some of my single entry lineups with Xander and Max Homa, just so everybody knows. That's going to be a starting point for a lot of my lineups. I mean, not that I do a ton of lineups, but let's say I'm building out like 6 to 8 different tournament lineups. I would say at least 2 to 3 of them are going to be Max Homa Xander starts. So maybe that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 30% of my lineups are going to start with that specific build. David, you just went to Vegas. Speaking of Vegas, if you all are looking for Stephie Smalls, well, honorary Vegas pick from David, but she's going to be joining us soon. Not tonight, most likely, but she'll be on another show. She had some trouble going from Phoenix to Vegas and plane trouble. That's her excuse for ditching us on Valentine's Day. But we still get to make lineups, so not all is lost. David, who's your 5th pick?
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of an interesting spot here. Siwoo Kim did get stolen from me, as Ivan's alluded to in the chat. I'm now 100% convinced that Joel has been in the WinDaily Discord and read all of the tips. That line he spun before, that the cheeky grin said it all, really, didn't it? So now I'm 100% convinced of that. And there's 2 routes I can kind of go here, and I guess I'll give the names because I don't think any of the other players are going to go this route. Is I could have gone a Scheffler, JJ Spawn here potentially for my last 2 picks. Would have been an interesting route to go. There's a lot of links between TPC San Antonio and this course, especially around the green. JJ Spawn obviously won the TPC at TPC San Antonio with the Valero Texas Open, and he played very well at the Masters as well and finished 23rd, which is correlated to Riviera. The route I'm going to go instead is something a little bit more balanced, I think, because I just think that this rounds up the lineup a little bit stronger, and I'll go Sam Burns, who feels like he's potentially getting missed a little bit this week.
Yeah, I think that's true. In fact, Sam Burns was one of the nominees for one of our first picks when we picked Victor Hovland, Rory McIlroy. I'll tell you, that JJ Spawn pick is really interesting, which we can get to maybe another time, but I do want to touch on it because his history here is terrible, and he's coming off a couple missed cuts, which is why he's at like 3% ownership. I think he's really sneaky. First of all, you can just throw away the missed cuts from before. He's a completely different golfer now. First of all, he went through that stretch with the health issues for about 3 years, I think, which really kind of derailed him. But also 5-6 years ago, JJ Spawn was effectively like an Outlaw Tour talent. You know what I mean? He actually played in the Outlaw Tour when COVID hit, which was really interesting, and didn't even really finish well there, but he's really recovered. I think he's a really clever tournament play. But anyway, we have nominations to go. And we already have some of them in. Looks like Lucas Herbert, KH Lee, Tom Kim. Can we afford Tom Kim? Yeah, probably. Taylor Moore, Adam Scott. Oh, Lucas Herbert. Okay, so Courtney is going to be the second on Lucas Herbert, which leaves us how much? So Lucas Herbert is... He is 7,200. So that leaves us a decent amount. It leaves us 8,100. So we need nominations for somebody that's 8,100 or less, of course. So we'll take Terrell Hatton. Just kidding. There's a guy I really like. Okay, Justin Rose will work. Scott will work too. I'd love to second. You know what? I'm going to second Byron's Scott. Oh, Scott already got nominated. Okay, well, let's take Adam Scott. So we know about Adam Scott's history here, and I don't think we necessarily need to go over that. I think the recent form is pretty good with Adam Scott. The one I'm more curious about is Lucas Herbert. So, Spencer, I want to go to you. How is Lucas Herbert grading out, and are you in or out on Adam Scott?
I would say Lucas Herbert's probably more of a David answer. Like, he just never grades well for me. I'd be curious to hear what David has to say about it. I do know that he is a favorite in a lot of his head-to-head matchups on offshore books. That would mean something to me, but I'll let you answer that, David.
Yeah, I mean, Lucas Herbert was in the selections last week, so if we're talking about my selections being 1 to 2 tournaments too early, then it's a great play. Herbert kind of profiles a lot like Bo Hostler of driving distance and then great around the green play. And you're looking for the irons to potentially spike. Wasn't the result that we wanted from him last week, and he lost a little bit with the irons, but do bear in mind, I mean, he'd come across from Saudi Arabia to Phoenix, which is, potentially the furthest that you could fly around the world in one single distance. So, maybe a bit of jet lag you could put it down to. Other than that, he's having a great season. He's 27 years old. I think Lucas Herbert's got a big future about him. He's gonna surprise some people in some big tournaments eventually, and it may be here.
Fair enough. All right, and Spencer, Adam Scott, in or out?
Love the profile of Adam Scott. Absolutely hate the ownership.
Yeah, fair enough on that. Okay, David, you've got one more pick to make after Sam Burns. Who's it going to be?
Yeah, so as I said, foregoing Scheffler and JJ Spawn allowed me to go Burns and Zalatoris, which I just think it just feels a bit safer in terms of going those two players. As safe as Zalatoris can be. I'm going to discount last tournament that we saw him at the Farmers Insurance and put down the fact that we've had some extra time for him here. That was an extremely windy tournament. We know that he's obviously had the back injury towards the end of last year, but he's one of the best approach players in the game. And if that's a key statistic around here, as well as links to the Masters, which we know how Zalatoris plays around there, I'm happy to take the risk of what I suspect is probably going to be some depressed ownership.
Yeah, Zalatoris is an interesting play. Joel, in or out on Zalatoris?
I'm out because I'm just scared of the withdrawal. Which
you, of all people. That's amazing. Will Zalatoris is going to look as spry as ever.
That's terrifying. That's terrifying of Joel's team.
That's funny. All right, so let's move on. Joel, it's your pick. So you got Max Homa. I mean, I again love this team. Who's going to round it out? I mean, I'm going to play this team. I'll tell everybody right now. I'm playing this team somewhere.
So I'm down to two guys. I'm deciding between. I'll walk you through my thought process. It's between Seamus Power and Adam Hadwin. I think they're all both pretty close. In a big tournament, I think the better strategic play would probably be to go with Power because he's taking very little ownership, and I do think he could be a course fit. He's playing so well right now. His form is so good for someone being pretty much overlooked. But I'm going to take Adam Hadwin because he's also playing really well, and he's actually done it on this course before. And I think that's what's putting me over the edge with him, in that he's had a lot of success here, and kind of marrying that form that he has right now with his past success, I think makes him a really good fit for this week.
See, if you're going to build this lineup and you're going to enter it, and I like the Adam Hadwin pick, by the way. Like, I think that was probably the correct route to go between him and Seamus. I'd also make one of those with Sahith Theegala.
Yeah,
I really like that build.
He was the other guy. I was going to almost say three guys I was deciding between. It was Theegala was the third, but I decided just to go with two.
I like the Hadwin pick. I mean, he's probably safer, if you want to call it that. And I think Theegala might have more upside, which kind of intrigues me when we're talking GPPs. But I like your lineup a lot. There's really not much to pick apart with it.
David, you gotta tell us what you're laughing at.
I mean, this just find you someone to win and looks at Joel's builds. So good. The chat here is just always great every week.
Zach, you're the best.
That's my winner of comment of the week. So
all of you are the best, actually. But I'll tell you, Zach, my Valentine is Joel's lineup. It's Terrell Haddon, it's Hideki, it's Matt Fitzpatrick, it's Siwoo Kim, it's Max Homa, and it's Adam Hadwin. I mean, it truly is. So, Joel, thank you for giving me that 6 Valentines for me, a lineup that is going to take down all kinds of tournaments. I really like the balanced build, in all honesty. I like a lot of these builds. Spencer, yours is a team I like, in spite of the fact that, I might end up not being on Cantlay and JT Poston. We'll see how that plays out, but you got one more pick to make.
I think an interesting thing to do with Cantlay, if you didn't want to play him either, is, and because he didn't get picked, Sung J Im has upside. Sung J Im reminds me of Joaquin Neiman of last year, where the course history might not have been what you wanted, and a lot of people were off of him, but amazing weighted tee to green player, kind of the same trajectory I'm looking for in that regard. So I have no problem if you want to exchange Cantlay for Sung J and go that route with it. I guess when I look at how I want to build the end of this team, to me, it comes down to a lot of players. I guess I'll just name them all. So Scott Stallings would be intriguing. Thomas Dietrich. Cameron Davis burns me more than any player in the world. I don't know if I want to ruin this build. He probably has the best upside in my model of anybody, but probably has the most miscut potential. Hayden Buckley is intriguing. Patrick Rogers' course history is magnificent. He grades inside the top 35 on my model. I don't know if I want a 9-10% own Patrick Rogers to pair with the guys that I have. I don't know if that's necessarily the best build. I don't love this. I'm going to go with Thomas Dietrich and try to play a little safety at the bottom of this build here.
All right. Another guy, David, I kind of want to bounce that right back off of you before we get into our first round leaders. How you feeling about Dietrich this week?
He spiked for me because his approach play and his driving actually both went up in a big way last time that we saw him at the Pebble Beach. That's always a big positive for me when I'm looking at guys who might be a flyer. I always struggle with Dietrich because he's never got across the line, and just having that clutch factor to actually finish a tournament, even on the DP World Tour, we was kind of it was like the Will Zalatoris of the DP World Tour for a long time, of just constantly finishing in the top 5 but never actually getting the win done. So I mean, the difference here in this circumstance, I guess, for Spencer's, he doesn't need Dietrich to win. He needs Dietrich to kind of top 20. And then the rest of the build is golden.
Yeah, I like it. I think that's a really good build ultimately. So yeah, Joel, that's it. Do we get to the fun stuff now? How do we do this?
It. Well, don't forget, hit the like button. Give us a follow before we wrap up this draft. We're going to post the lineups on Twitter. I usually say, let us know what team you like most, but we already know the answer to that. Let's move on. We already have a winner for tonight. So follow us. And if you go into the Discord and sign up with WinDaily, you will get our outright bets. But for tonight, we're going to leave you with our first round leaders, which is our staple. We're going to hit one this week. I have a feeling. I feel good about it. We'll start with you, David. Who are you looking at in the first round leader market?
Can you come back to me? Give me 5 minutes.
You can do that. That can be arranged. Yep. That can be arranged. Spence, how about you?
Well, this is not necessarily the best answer to give after that, but I am going to drop my plays in the Discord. I'm not meaning to do this every single week. It's very important to me that when I give an official play, the play does that's my play for the week. And I don't want to say something on here that I go back on at some point. So drop in the Discord. I will have all those selections in there either tonight or tomorrow morning. I guess I will flip the script and do what I did last week based off of that. I bet Xander Schauffele at 19-1. That was on Bet365 in the enhanced market. I also grabbed Patrick Cantlay at 30-1 before that number dropped. Anything above 24-1 was value for me. And that is my card this week in the outright market.
I like it. I have a few home run long shots from the first round leader market this week, which I'm excited about. So I'll run through them. My first one's KH at 90-1. I like Taylor Moore at 90-1. He's been playing great. Someone I really wanted to have kind of on my card. Tommy Fleetwood at 90-1 and Alex Noren at 80-1.
I like those plays. I think I like every single one. Like they're all on my short list of options that I am considering.
There we have it. How about you, David? Are we able to round out your first round leader pool yet?
Yeah, we're good. Hey, I like that Tommy Fleetwood play as well. I was extremely close on him this week. Was in between Nor and Fleetwood Power for my final pick into the selections this week. So I do like that for one round there for sure. I'm leaning towards the PM this time for the first round leaders. Reason being is it's just looking like brutally cold in the morning. That first day in LA, 4 degrees Celsius, which you guys can translate to Fahrenheit, is it's very, very cold. So I'm thinking afternoon. I understand there's a risk with the Poana greens. They do get worn. It does get a little bit bumpy in the afternoon. So I appreciate that side of it as well. I just think it's going to be so brutally cold in the morning, and the wind looks to die down in the afternoon as well, that you could perhaps see this flip here a little bit. So I am going with Tyrrell Hatton 45-1, Justin Thomas 25s, Siwoo Kim 66s, Seamus Power at 70s, and JJ Spawn at 100s.
I love it. I love it. And now, Sia, I feel like you are due to hit probably 2 this week, not just 1, but 2. Who are you looking at?
Yeah, it might be 3 this week. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 3. By the way, Scott Holdridge has entered the chat. Scott, how are you, kind sir? Okay, so I've got a couple afternoon guys, a couple morning guys. I had on a different show, I gave out, I believe 6, but I didn't know that when I gave them out, I didn't know the tee times in that moment. So what I'm going to do is I actually have 6, but I'm only going to give out 4 because I think 2 of them I'm actually going to change. So I'll give out 4 and I'll give out the next 2 in the WinDaily Discord tomorrow. So along with a few of the outrights that I like. Let's start with Max Homa at 35-1. We'll go to Ricky Fowler, who I really wanted to draft on our team, by the way, at 60-1. We'll go Wyndham Clark at 70-1. Tommy Fleetwood at 80-1. Now that's 4 right there. I'm going to give a 5th. So I went Homa, Ricky Fowler, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, who, Joel, I think you were on Tommy as well, endorsed by David as well. And this guy's going out in the afternoon, I believe. The guy who's going to be your easy button first round leader. The first round leader at the end of the Genesis Invitational. It's none other. This is 48 hours ahead of time, folks. It's none other than at 55-1. Hideki Matsuyama. You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome. It's an investment.
It's that easy. It's that easy, folks. So just in case you forgot, this is a mortgage bet. So that means every dollar you have, mortgage your home, refi, get a loan, put it all on Hideki, first round leader, then you have 50 homes. It's that easy.
And don't forget, it's not just every dollar you have, it's every dollar you can get, which means you could steal money or you could just sell what you have. I'm looking at an iPad. I've got this water bottle that might be worth 50 cents. Like it adds up.
A lot of
Look
nice
in the
pictures in the background.
Yes, those are that Magic Johnson. Those 2 Magic Johnson Larry Bird ones. Those are autographed.
Don't get grandma's retirement money. That should be on this bet.
I'm selling these tonight, and I'm going to get that money, and I'll buy them back. I can buy like 5 of those once I hit the first round leader. It's easy. It's just math. It's math.
You're probably going to end up buying Tiger Woods after this because you'll have more money than him because that's how easy it's going to be. So
that's right.
It's that simple. Tiger's back. It's going to be fun. We get to see the big cat. Probably not going to play him in DFS or bet on him because he's definitely not healthy, but it's fun to watch him either way. Good luck this week. See you. Did I forget anything?
Spencer, did I forget anything?
Well, I want to say Jason Day is going to win, but I'm not going to make that prediction this week. I'm going to probably be off of Jason Day, so I just want to throw that out there.
Wow.
Whoa.
He's striking. I'll say this. He's striking it really well. But one thing I noticed, I talked to Greg Ducharme about this, or he brought it to my attention. His putting on this track has been horrific. Very interesting, right?
He's been very bad. And you would think that he'd be good out here, like the Kikuyu grass from like that's an Australian thing. You think he'd be able to play out of that, and you would think he'd putt well and have a good around the green game. He's been a disaster. And like my biggest concern with him is that he's 13, 14, 15%. Look, yeah. I don't know. My model likes him fine. I just have some concerns on the back end. Just going to throw that out there. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he wins the tournament, but this is going to be the 1 week that I'm off of him.
Yeah, and my model sports